Most men over 60 think that slowing down in the bedroom is just part of aging. They assume that less touch, less desire, even less masturbation is simply what happens with time. But what if I told you that quiet decision to let it go might be costing you more than you realize? Hi, I'm Dr. Max Cole. I'm a urologist with over 30 years of experience helping older men protect their vitality, dignity, and connection without shame. Pills or pressure? Let me share a story that still stays with me. A 73-year-old man named Alan once came into my office, not for erectile dysfunction, not even for urinary incontinence. He simply said, "Doc, I don't feel like me anymore." He had stopped all forms of intimacy after his wife passed, including masturbation. No more touching, no more closeness, just silence or man. And here's what happened. His memory faded, his energy dropped, he gained weight, he isolated himself. But it wasn't until we talked about connection, emotional and physical, that something clicked. Alan didn't need a prescription. He needed a path back to his body, to his manhood, and to a deeper sense of senior wisdom that he thought was gone for good. This isn't just about sexual health. It's about senior health, mental clarity, longevity, even your sense of identity as a man. So in this video, I'll gently walk you through 5 hidden consequences that can quietly begin when intimacy, masturbation, or even simple affection disappears after 60. And I'll show you natural, proven steps to help you feel more alive without pressure and at your own pace. Before we begin, if you believe it's never too late to reconnect with your body, hit like and subscribe to Life Over 50 Plus. Because what you'll hear at the end of this video may change how you see yourself and help you rewrite your next chapter with more confidence and clarity. Now, let's begin with the first silent change that often goes unnoticed until it's already taken hold. 1. Your brain starts to age prematurely. One of the most overlooked signs of disconnect in older men isn't physical, it's mental. I'm not just talking about memory slips or losing your train of thought. I'm talking about something deeper. Something I've witnessed for decades in my practice as a urologist, where a quiet decline in sexual health can lead to a noticeable change in how a man thinks, feels, and shows up in life. Let me tell you about Harold. He was 72 when he came to see me. No complaints of urinary incontinence, no signs of erectile dysfunction. He just looked me in the eye and said, "Doc, I'm not as sharp as I used to be. I lose focus, I forget names, I feel dull." At first, it seemed like normal aging, but then we talked about his personal life. Since losing his wife, Harold hadn't been physically intimate, not with anyone, not even with himself. No affection, no masturbation, just a growing silence. What many seniors don't realize is that intimacy, including masturbation, isn't just about pleasure. It's one of the most natural, God-given ways the body supports the brain. When we engage in closeness, our brains release dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphins, chemicals that sharpen memory, elevate mood, and regulate emotion. But when that intimacy fades, so does stimulation. Over time, blood flow to critical areas of the brain begins to slow. Focus weakens, energy drops, emotional resilience starts to thin out. And without realizing it, the brain of a senior man may begin aging faster than it should. Now I want to be clear. This isn't about telling every elderly man to start chasing sexual activity. It's about recognizing that connection, physical or emotional, is part of the advice for the elderly that we often leave out because it feels awkward or private or not important. But believe me, it is. In Harold's case, I didn't suggest a prescription. I suggested presence. We talked about simple health tips, joining a senior yoga group, reconnecting with touch, starting with his own body through daily self-massage, light breathing, and yes, even reintroducing mindful masturbation if it felt right. Over the next 6 months, Harold told me something that gave me goosebumps. "I started feeling awake again," he said, "not from pills, not from pressure, but from remembering that his body and his mind were still worth caring for." So if you've noticed your memory isn't what it used to be, or you feel emotionally flat, don't ignore that signal. It might not be age, it might be absence. And sometimes the solution isn't a medical fix, it's a personal reconnection. You don't need to go fast. You don't need to go far. You just need to begin. Coming up next, I'll share how your physical strength and hormone balance may also be affected by the absence of touch, especially after 60. and what you can do starting today to bring vitality back into your body. Let's keep going. 2. Your body loses its rhythm and power. There's a quiet shift that happens in many men over 60. It doesn't always show up with a bang. Sometimes it's subtle, a little weight gain, a drop in energy, less drive to move, to touch, to feel. And for many elderly men I've worked with, they chalk it up to just getting older. But as someone who's been practicing urology for over 3 decades, let me tell you something that might surprise you. It's not just age. It's often disconnection. Let me share the story of Richard and Elaine. They were both in their late 60s, married for over 40 years. Richard came in complaining of fatigue, low motivation, and a general feeling that his body was slowing down. He'd stopped going to the gym, his muscle tone was fading, and his testosterone levels had dipped below average for his age. What stood out in our conversation wasn't just the lab results, it was the emotion. He looked at me and said, "We haven't been close, Doc. Not in years. I just thought that part of life was over." And here's what I gently explained to Richard. Intimacy, whether with a partner or through mindful masturbation, isn't a luxury. It's part of men's health. It stimulates blood flow, encourages the production of testosterone, and activates a cascade of physical benefits that go far beyond the bedroom. When touch disappears, circulation slows. When sexual expression fades, hormonal balance suffers. And when a man stops engaging with his body emotionally and physically, his strength, vitality, and even immune response can begin to drop. This doesn't mean you need to push yourself into something that feels unnatural, but it does mean your body is paying attention even if no one else is, and it responds to the smallest changes. I recommended Richard try walking 20 minutes a day, not on a treadmill, but with Elaine. Just walking, talking, touching, rebuilding rhythm. We also introduced a simple routine of gentle stretching and body awareness exercises. It wasn't about sexual education in the traditional sense. It was about reconnection, about honoring the natural ebb and flow of his senior health. 3 months later, Richard came back. His energy had improved. His waistline had shrunk a bit. But most importantly, he smiled when he said, "We're holding hands again, sometimes more." That to me is what senior wisdom looks like. Not chasing youth, but learning to listen to your body, to your needs, to your partner, and to respond with presence, not pressure. If you're a man over 60 and you've felt this slow decline, I want to offer a gentle suggestion. Start with one small act, maybe a morning stretch, maybe a warm bath with soft music, maybe even mindful self-touch done not with shame but with gratitude. Your body still wants to feel strong. It still wants to move, to breathe, to connect. And even if you've been distant from it for years, it's never too late to come home to yourself. Up next, we'll talk about what happens not just to your body, but to your relationships when intimacy begins to fade, and how quiet emotional distance can become one of the greatest risks to your happiness in later life. Stay with me. 3. Your relationships quietly crumble. Some relationships don't end with a bang. They fade slowly, quietly, not from a lack of love, but from a lack of touch. And over time, even the most loyal couples can start to feel like strangers under the same roof. I once sat with a woman named Ellen. She was 74. Her husband had gone through prostate cancer treatment and understandably lost confidence in his sexual health. They stopped being intimate, stopped touching, stopped trying. "I love him," she told me, "but I miss being held. I miss feeling like his partner, not just his caregiver." Her voice didn't carry blame. It carried quiet grief. And this is something I've seen again and again in elderly couples. The absence of intimacy doesn't just affect the body, it starves the relationship. Whether it's due to erectile dysfunction, fatigue, fear, or the simple belief that we're too old for this, many seniors unknowingly slip into emotional disconnection. They stop sharing soft moments. They stop flirting. They stop reaching. And eventually they begin to assume things. One partner thinks the other has lost interest. The other feels rejected or ashamed. But no one talks about it. That silence becomes the real problem. Not the lack of sex, not the physical limitations, but the loss of emotional closeness. As a urologist and someone who spent decades offering advice for the elderly, I've learned that relationships thrive not on perfection, but on intention. A simple goodnight kiss, a hand rested on a shoulder, a slow dance in the kitchen. You don't need to fix anything overnight. You just need to begin reaching again. For some couples, that starts with conversation. For others, it may be sharing a memory from your early years together. And for some, it might even be as simple as sitting together in silence, holding hands, and remembering that you still belong to each other. If you're single, widowed, or divorced, this message still applies. Senior health isn't just about the body, it's about the heart. And whether it's through a friendship, a support group, or even mindful masturbation, your ability to connect, to feel valued, wanted, seen still matters. Deeply. One small act of closeness can begin to reawaken what years of silence tried to numb. It might feel awkward at first. It might feel uncertain. But every time I've seen someone take that risk to reach again, they came out stronger, more alive, more connected. If you've drifted from someone you love, I invite you to start small. Share a meal, sit a little closer, say the words "I miss you." These aren't just romantic gestures. They are acts of healing. And in the next section, we'll explore something even more personal, how your sense of identity as a man and your self-worth can quietly erode when physical and emotional intimacy disappear. You won't want to miss this. Let's continue. 4. Your sense of self-worth diminishes. For many men, aging isn't just a physical journey, it's a deeply emotional one. And what surprises most people isn't how the body changes, but how quietly the mind begins to question its own value. I once met a man named Leonard. He was 75, widowed for several years. No major urology issues, no complaints of erectile dysfunction, no concerns about urinary incontinence. But when he sat down across from me, his shoulders slumped and his voice barely above a whisper, he said something I'll never forget. "I don't feel like a man anymore." He wasn't referring to performance. He was talking about presence, the feeling of being needed, desired, alive. This is something I hear far too often in senior health consultations. When physical intimacy disappears, whether with a partner or within yourself, your inner compass begins to spin. You stop grooming, you stop moving, you stop reaching, and eventually you stop believing you matter. Leonard told me he had stopped masturbating years ago, not because he had to, but because he felt there was no point. He described his body as just a shell now, and behind those words was something deeper: grief. The truth is, connection and self-worth go hand in hand. Even a simple act of self-care, a warm bath, a gentle stretch, a soft touch can send a message to your brain. I still count. That's not vanity. That's senior wisdom. We talked about small changes, daily walks, slow breathing, practicing gratitude while looking in the mirror. And yes, even reintroducing self-touch, not for performance, but for reconnection. Because masturbation is not bad for health. In fact, when done mindfully, it can awaken circulation, stimulate testosterone, reduce stress, and rebuild a relationship with your own body. Especially for elderly men, this can be a powerful tool, not of lust, but of healing. A month later, Leonard returned. His energy was lighter. He had started doing simple exercise for seniors over 60, trimmed his beard, and even joined a local men's discussion group. Not because he suddenly felt young again, but because he remembered that he was still here, still worthy, still him. So if you've ever looked in the mirror and felt disconnected from the person staring back at you, I want to say this as clearly as I can. You have not disappeared. You are not less of a man, and it's okay to want to feel whole again. Start with something small. Take care of your skin, move your body, touch it with kindness. Give yourself permission to matter. Because when you reclaim your connection with yourself, everything around you begins to shift. And coming up next, we'll talk about something even more profound: how the presence or absence of intimacy might actually influence the length of your life, and what the science says about staying connected, not just for love, but for longevity. Let's continue. 5. You may be reducing your lifespan without realizing it. It's not something most doctors say out loud, but after over 30 years in urology, I've seen it too many times to ignore. When physical and emotional intimacy disappear from a man's life, especially after 60, it doesn't just affect mood or energy. It can quietly take years off his life. Let me tell you about Robert. He was 81 when he walked into my clinic. Sharp mind, good posture, a certain brightness in his eyes that most men his age didn't carry. When I asked what he did to stay so vibrant, he smiled and said, "Every morning I flirt with my wife. Every night we hold each other." And once in a while, we still make love. It wasn't a performance-based routine. It was a ritual of connection. And Robert didn't know this, but what he was doing lined up perfectly with decades of senior health research. Studies from respected journals, including the British Medical Journal, have found that older adults who maintain regular forms of intimacy, be it affectionate touch kissing or sexual activity, live significantly longer. Why? Because these moments of closeness release life-extending chemicals. Oxytocin to reduce stress, endorphins to combat pain, dopamine to lift your mood. And yes, physical arousal itself improves blood flow balances, testosterone, and supports immune function. When you remove that connection even unintentionally, the body begins to shift. Stress hormones like cortisol stay elevated, sleep becomes lighter, blood pressure climbs, the immune system weakens, inflammation creeps in, and diseases that were once avoidable start showing up more often. It doesn't matter if you're partnered or single, whether it's a hug from a friend, a massage, or even mindful masturbation, your body needs signals of connection to function optimally. Let's be clear, this is not about chasing youth or clinging to the past. This is about men's health. It's about creating a present that supports your longevity, peace, and purpose. Even gentle touch, shared laughter, or slow dancing to music in the living room can activate healing. You don't need a prescription. You need permission to feel, to reach, to open again. I remember a gentleman in his mid-70s asking me if masturbation is good or bad for health. He had stopped for years, assuming it was unnecessary or inappropriate at his age. But when we reframed it as an act of self-care, a way to stimulate circulation, release tension, and support semen retention, his whole attitude changed. And so did his energy. That's the point of these health tips. Not to push or pressure, but to gently remind you that your body is still very much alive and it wants to stay that way. So if intimacy in any form has been missing from your life for a while, this is your invitation. Start small. Touch your own hand with intention. Put your arm around someone you care about. Take a moment at night to connect with your body through breath movement or presence. These may seem like small acts, but in senior wisdom we know this. Small things done with intention carry extraordinary power. In the final section, I'll share why it's never too late, no matter how long it's been, no matter what you've lost. Because life, love, and connection aren't just for the young, they're for the willing. Let's finish strong. 6. It's never too late to feel alive again. I've worked with thousands of men in my 30-plus years of urology. Some walked in with test results. Others came in carrying silence. But the one belief that breaks my heart the most is this: doc, I think that part of my life is just over. I'd like to share a story with you. Her name was Eleanor. She was 79, a retired school teacher, widowed for nearly a decade. She wasn't coming to see me for erectile dysfunction or urinary incontinence or even anything physical. She came in because she felt invisible. I miss being touched, she said quietly. Not for sex, just to feel like a woman again. And that's when I knew this isn't just a men's issue. It's a human one. The need to feel connected doesn't retire with age. It may soften, it may evolve, but it never disappears. Whether you're 60 or 90, single or partnered, struggling or thriving, your body still wants to feel alive. That includes sexual health. That includes touch, attention, presence. And yes, for some, that includes masturbation. And let me be absolutely clear here, masturbation is not bad for health. In fact, when practiced mindfully, it can help regulate hormones, reduce stress, and support healthy blood flow, all important parts of senior health. We started Eleanor on a very simple path. She joined a local movement class exercise for seniors over 60, gentle, slow, and joyful. She began journaling about desire, not in a sexual way, but in a soulful way. And she made an appointment once a month for therapeutic massage. The shift was subtle, but it was there. She told me I didn't expect to feel this much softness return to my skin, to my heart. This is what I mean when I say it's never too late. You don't need fireworks. You don't need a new partner. You don't even need perfect health. You just need one thing: a willingness to begin again. Start by reconnecting with yourself. That could be a morning breath ritual. It could be the decision to take care of your skin. Or maybe you allow yourself a quiet, private moment, no shame, no pressure, where you remember your own worth through touch. This is part of senior wisdom, to recognize that care, pleasure, and healing are not reserved for the young. They belong to the brave, to those who are willing to say, I still matter. And if that sounds like you, if there's even a small whisper inside saying, maybe I'm ready, I want you to follow it. Because what you'll find on the other side isn't just connection, it's vitality, it's peace, it's life. Up next, in the final moments of this video, I want to leave you with a message I've shared with patients for years. A message about hope, healing, and why no matter how much time has passed, you are not done yet. Let's bring it all together. Conclusion. Your story isn't over. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you not just for watching, but for being open, because this conversation hasn't been easy. For many elderly men, the topics of masturbation, intimacy, loss of connection, or feeling less than are rarely talked about. And yet they affect so many lives quietly. We've explored how the lack of intimacy can cause your brain to age faster, how your body loses strength, rhythm, and testosterone, how relationships fade into silence, how self-worth erodes when touch disappears, and even how longevity can shrink when closeness is lost. But here's what I hope you remember most. None of these changes are final. I've seen men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s rebuild that part of themselves. Not by forcing anything, not by chasing youth, but by choosing reconnection. Sometimes that starts with a hand on the shoulder. Sometimes it's a walk with a loved one. And sometimes, yes, it begins with a quiet moment alone and allowing yourself to feel again, to breathe again, to remember that your body is still here, still capable of joy, still worthy of care. Masturbation is not bad for health. In fact, for many seniors, it becomes part of a healthy routine, helping to stimulate blood flow, regulate hormones, relieve stress, and support emotional wellness. When approached mindfully, it's not shameful. It's healing. It's senior wisdom. No matter how long it's been or how far away connection might feel, you can return. Your men's health journey isn't linear, and your identity as a man was never defined by performance. It was always about presence. So here's my final advice for the elderly. Don't wait for perfect timing. Don't assume it's too late. Start with one small step. Take a walk. Breathe with intention. Speak kindly to your reflection. Reach for someone or yourself with gentleness. Your story isn't over. There are still pages waiting to be written, and they can be filled with peace, with pleasure, with partnership, if you're willing to try. If this message spoke to you, I invite you to leave a comment below, just a simple "still here," to let me know you're part of this journey. You can also share your story, because you never know, your words might help another man who's been silently waiting for a sign. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Life Over 50 Plus. This is a space where we talk honestly about senior health, intimacy, and aging with respect, care, and real solutions. You're not alone. You're not done. And I truly believe your best chapter might still be ahead. Let's walk there together.